is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
Can you believe we are 1/3 of the way through 2025 and 1/4 of the way through this century? In fact, we are 25 years away from the year 2000. The last time we could say we were 25 years away from the year 2000 was 1975. And today, that's exactly what we were talking about. April 28th, 1975, to be exact, when Gar Hurd of the Buffalo Braves was on the cover of SI. We'll talk with Coach Hurd about that great team and the 75 NBA MVP and teammate of Gar's, Bob McAdoo. Welcome to the Past Star Prime podcast. Bill Mahoney and Mark Hoffman on hand again, as always. First time I remember McAdoo, I mean really remember him, was when he was traded to the Lakers. Did you guys know it was Christmas Eve, 1981?
Wow.
Who knew?
What a bunch of Scrooges, man. Why would
Let me ask you a question. Do the Lakers just get every great player when they need it? I mean, you're talking McAdoo, you're talking Kareem, you're talking Pau Gasol, Luka Doncic. Doesn't it seem weird? They always just seem to get one of the best players whenever they need it. Why do people deal with the Lakers?
Well, yeah.
You know, if they were located in Green Bay, it would never happen.
Exactly.
But
Bob
also,
McAdoo was exactly what the Lakers needed.
A lot of that was West, because like Michael Thompson was he was a good player. He was the number 1 overall pick, I think.
Yeah.
But he was okay, and then he was just perfect for what the Lakers needed.
Yes.
And West was great at figuring out the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. That's
right.
I
mean, remember when he traded Norm Nixon, and we were like, "What the
Byron
heck?"
Scott?
And, so yeah. But
and Byron Scott had just been picked by the Clippers, so he was the number 4 pick, and so you had no idea. But Norm Nixon was solid.
He was great. But McAdoo, man, Billy, that dude was money.
When he was with the Lakers, and I watched him or listened to when he was with the Buffalo Braves because I liked Orny DiGregorio, but it appeared he hit every shot. And especially with the Lakers, when he came in, he didn't get 50 points. He seemed like he did. He'd end up sometimes with 8 points, but they were all clutch points at the perfect time.
Yeah.
I remember McAdoo when he first came up. I think it was a rookie with the Braves. He might have been Rookie of the Year. And I remember he was this great player, but he was stuck in Buffalo.
Well, that version that we saw of McAdoo in LA didn't really appear until the postseason with the Lakers.
Yep.
And then, he was a huge force in the fourth quarter of a lot of those series. So we'll talk about when he was an unstoppable force in Buffalo, averaged like 35 points a game. And was just a great, great shooter. But we'll start, as always, with the scorecard. Bill.
Well, I'm going to have to talk about baseball's premier catcher. We all know at that time it was Carlton Fisk, who right now, or at least back in the day, he was sidelined by a broken arm. But this was after previously suffering a shoulder separation, chopped off fingertip, severe groin injuries, and a shattered knee. He was 27 years old. Well, anyhow, the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts wrote a sign for him that said, or we put an ad in for him that said, "We still love you, Carlton." But I just can't over the fact that he was 27 years old and he had these type of injuries that in a lot of ways could have ended his career.
I think he was the first bionic man.
And to think now, guys take days off for load management, and this guy's like playing through a chopped off tip of his finger.
I know, and I never knew that one. I'm not saying all his injuries, but chopped off fingertips seems like something that would be, like we all know Ronnie Lott did that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly.
What I remember about Fisk was when he changed his number. Remember, he went from 27 to 72.
Yeah.
When he revitalized his career with the White Sox.
Right. When he went from the Sox to the Sox.
Is that why he did that?
Yeah, I think it was like just change of luck, and it was just, he just reversed his numbers. He kept his lucky numbers, just reversed them.
Wow. Yeah. I did not know that.
And of course, that's the year of his famous home run. So he obviously came back that year.
Yeah.
And in October has one of the most famous home runs in baseball history. where he's waving it fair, and it hits the foul pole. Game 6 of the '75 World Series. Mark, what
And
do
it
you?
actually worked. The waving was the difference for
That
why
was
the
that was
ball
the
stayed
only
fair.
difference.
Mark?
Well, I got one. So, we've been talking about how Jack Nicklaus won the Masters, his 5th Masters. He's all excited. He calls his home in Florida. He gets his son, Steve, who's 12 years old, on the other end. He goes, "Hey, Steve." And he was hoping for the boy to go, "Oh my God, Dad, I'm so proud of you. What a way to go. Win the Masters." Instead, he just said, "Hi, how you doing?" "Okay." "Well, did you watch the tournament on TV?" Jack says. "Yeah, but I left early." "Well, where'd you go?" "To play golf." "Hey, I shot a 44 in 9 holes. On the first hole, I did this." And then the son just goes into him. It's all about him.
That is
But
so
that's what kids do.
12-year-old. That is
It is.
great.
That's what kids do.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember Drew Brees always talked about that his son like Cam Newton.
Yeah.
But I'm playing, and he goes, "Yeah, but Cam Newton's the best." And I'm thinking,
Right.
it's
Right.
what
It's just
kids
like,
have no
yeah.
thought about that till they get older and realize Dad was a great quarterback too. They just whatever's on their mind.
Yeah,
No,
but
but you tell your kids something and they'll go, "That's great, Dad." But by the way, you know what's
Yes.
really interesting that happened to me?
Yep. Callie
remember
does
when
it. Yeah.
we had Bill Cartwright on, and he's talking about playing with the Knicks and playing with Jordan and stuff, and his kids are like, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a meeting this Thursday at the school with,
Yeah.
that's just Dad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dad's job is a basketball player.
Exactly.
And the thing is we look at these players and go, "This guy's amazing," and the kids look at him like, "God, Dad, stop."
Right.
I'm
Enough.
glad you
Embarrassing
whatever.
me.
What did you do in your basket game?
Right. Enough with the Jordan.
Yeah. Who is this guy?
Bill, they said it.
They said it. Milt May, Houston catcher, upon stealing a base for the first time in his 5-year big league career. I thought they'd stop the game and give me second base.
Yeah. You know how many steals Milt May had in his career?
8.
4. So you
Oh,
got 1 of 4.
And he played a long
wow.
time.
He did. He played from 1970 to 84.
He
And I
did.
remember him with the Tigers from 76 to 79 before Lance Parrish took over.
So he was good for a steal every 4 years.
Yes.
Something like that. Yes.
You knew he was going to get you. You knew he was going to get you. You just
Uh,
didn't know when.
he picked his spots.
He did.
Yes.
A beaut of a brawl. The Braves and the Bullets in an NBA playoff matchup that featured Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld from Washington against Buffalo's Bob McAdoo, Phil Smith, and our guest today, Gar Hurd. Buffalo takes game 1 of the series, and afterwards, Casey Jones remarked, "I haven't seen a team run by us like that all year. We were absolutely terrible. The only sure way to keep McAdoo from going to the basket is to put a bomb in his car when we get to Buffalo." So, once again, just a little different in how they said things back 50 years
Yes.
ago. Now that would draw the ire of the FBI.
We take things very literal nowadays.
But
Right.
you know what's interesting is think about the names of these two teams. You could not use them today. The Buffalo Braves,
Yeah, that's
can't do
right.
that. And the Bullets. The Bullets actually changed their name to the Wizards because
Yes.
the Bullets were having a negative connotation with all the violence in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah, that might be the first team that changed their name.
Right.
For
Yeah.
that reason at least.
Right.
Other teams
Yeah.
change their
Yeah.
names, but
And I
the
thought
guy,
Bullets was always a cool name.
I
I did
agree.
too.
I
Me
agree.
too.
The guy Buffalo was having a real problem with was guard Kevin Porter, a very underrated player in his time. Led the league in assists 4 different times. He was a pass first kind of guy, but he had 37 points and 23 assists in the next 2 wins, both for Washington. Game 5, series tied at 2. Elvin Hayes goes for 46 points as Washington wins 97-93. Series goes back to Buffalo for game 6 with Washington up 3 games to 2.
And without spoiling what happens, it's a great finish to the series.
I was just impressed with Bob McAdoo, man. That dude averaged nearly 40 points in that series.
Hint though, when I say it's a great finish to the series, that means it doesn't end in 6.
No.
No,
Although
it gets to go.
game 7 wasn't that close, I don't think.
No, it wasn't.
The Buffalo Braves were one of 3 expansion teams to join the NBA in 1970, and as you would imagine, they weren't very good those first few years. But in the spring of 1975, they were on the verge of their first postseason berth behind a dominant Bob McAdoo. But we all know that you can't do it with just one guy, and McAdoo had some help. Ernie DiGregorio, Randy Smith, and the man on the April 28, 1975 cover of Sports Illustrated, Gar Heard. Mr. Heard played his college hoops at the University of Oklahoma, and when he graduated, he was the school's second leading all-time scorer and all-time leading rebounder. After spending his first few years in Seattle and Chicago, Heard blossomed upon being dealt to Buffalo, averaging 15 points and almost 12 rebounds a game in 1974. And now to talk to us about that time in Buffalo and more is the cover man himself, Gar Heard. Thanks for joining us today, Gar, on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Glad to be here.
50 years ago, you were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Front and center, there you are. Do you remember what it was like when you saw that cover, and did it mean much to you?
I didn't realize that until I got a call from a family that, guess what? You're on the Sports Illustrated cover. But it meant a lot, because it gave us an opportunity to get a lot of exposure. We had a very young team, Bob McAdoo, as you mentioned, but you forgot one guy, Jimmy McMillan, who was a very key part of our team, too.
You guys were in a battle against the Bullets in that first round of the playoffs, and there is a great photo inside the magazine of Randy Smith, you, Wes Unseld, Elvin Hayes, and McAdoo going for a rebound. It just really is emblematic of that time and that series. What do you remember about that series?
I remember I had to guard Elvin Hayes every night, which was a nightmare. But, we had a type of team. We was young, we was aggressive, and we liked to get up and down the floor. And we felt that we had the speed and the to take advantage of them. But Bullet was Wes Unseld, Elvin Hayes, 2 of the strongest guys in the league. Then they had, I think, Bobby Daniels was on that team, Phil Chenier. So they was pretty strong. But we took them to 7 games. They beat us in the 7th game in Baltimore.
So you're drafted in the 3rd round, and you weren't a can't-miss prospect, great player, but what motivated you just to grind your way to this long NBA career that you had?
Well, I had a great teacher and Coach McLeod in college, When I came out of high school, I was averaging 30 points a game. So I go to college, I figured I was going to be a big-time scorer. But the first thing John McLeod told us that we're not going to have a lot of lead scoring. My average guy is probably about 15 points a game. You're going to be able to rebound. You're going to be able to play defense. And I think that really, propelled me to have a good NBA career because I was very good rebounding. I'm a pretty good defensive player. But, defense didn't get a lot of attention then like it is now. But and I think what he taught us in college really helped me with my career.
How did you, though, a lot of times guys come out of college and are big scorers. It's a tough adjustment to all of a sudden go, I'm going to be a defensive rebounder. How did you get in the mental frame of mind to know that's what you were going to do, and you did it fantastically?
It was tough at first, when you're big time scoring in high school, and you come into college, you figure you're going to average at least 20, 25 points a game as a freshman. But it kind of changed, though. It really taught me how to play because we didn't work on a lot of defense in high school. So he really focused a lot on defense and rebounding. And we had some rebounding drills, and I thought we was playing football a lot of time when we were doing the drills. But John taught us that, in order to survive, you have to be able to guard people. You have to be able to rebound the basketball. And we did that,
So you started your career with the Sonics, which obviously now Oklahoma City Thunder. Then you go to Chicago, and then you come to Buffalo, which is now the Clippers. So you start off on these teams that a modern fan today or a young kid today didn't even know existed. But is there a lot of pride in that fact that during your 15-year careers, you represented so many different franchises?
It is, but I had to give one guy credit. That's Tom Bashir. He was in Seattle when I came. He was a starting forward in Seattle when I got drafted. And so, I used to go against him every day in practice. So I guess one day he told Lenny that, hey, you need to start this kid because he's getting the best of me. And Tom taught me a lot about the game. Yeah, as a rookie, He taught me the things that he was doing. Tom had a reputation not being one of the nicest guys in the league anyway. So he taught me a lot of things about how to play the game the way it was.
You got to play for Jack Ramsey in Buffalo. What was he like as a coach?
I thought he was great. He really turned us loose. Jack, he had control, but he let us play. And it's like McAdoo took over Ernie came in and kind of ran the team, then Jim McMillan and myself. So we had a good bunch of guys that got along well together, had a lot of fun together, but we loved to get up and down the floor. We scored a lot of points. So and I think that was the main thing. And Jack let us do that.
You spent a couple of years playing, as we mentioned, with Bob McAdoo when he was just at his absolute best. Tell our listeners how good of a player he was.
I made him what he was.
Well, of course. Besides that.
He was fantastic. He started out as a starting forward. And when I first got there, because Bob Kaufman was the starting center, Kaufman got hurt. They moved McAdoo to center, and then coach started me at forward spot. And just watching this guy, man, he could score from anywhere, and he was a fantastic athlete as far as he could rebound the ball, he could shoot the ball from anywhere. And he was a nice guy. He just, he loved to shoot. Let's say he wasn't the best passer in the world, but he loved to shoot. And he could shoot it. And he gave guys fit, because the centers then was like big guys. They wasn't that athletic like they are now. So Mike could then roam around on the outside and just fill it up.
Yeah, Gar, I'm going to go back for a second because you talked about a place I used to live. I lived in Seattle for a while.
Right.
And they absolutely still love and miss their Supersonics. What was it like playing in Seattle? Can you picture nowadays that city does not have a team anymore?
I can't. I really can't, because they should have a team up there. I mean, because playing in Seattle was fantastic. Lenny was my coach when I was there. And the fans was fantastic. Although we didn't win a lot of games early, but the fans came out because they supported the team. I don't know why we haven't gotten the team back up there yet. And I'm sure they're still trying to. But it's just amazing that city deserves a team.
Yeah, you can't mention Oklahoma City there. I did once. I said, Oklahoma's pretty good. I thought they were going to kill me. So now when you go to Seattle, the one guy goes, "Don't you dare, Matt." I said, "Okay, right." So
well, I was surprised they moved to Oklahoma City. That's what surprised me. But, I just don't understand why we haven't gotten the team back up there yet. I really don't.
I want to make a correction. This was the Braves' second playoff appearance in their young history. So the Bullets bounce you guys in 7. And you got to think, hey, we got something good here going. And then all of a sudden you're traded next February to Phoenix. What was it like to not only have to get an entirely new wardrobe going from Buffalo to Phoenix, but being traded in the middle of a season?
Shocking. It was during the All-Star break, and it was kind of shocking because at that time we was on the run to making the playoff again. And then I got traded to Phoenix, who at that point I think was in last place in that division. So it was a shocker. I saw my playoff check disappear. And so it was a shocker. But getting here and then playing for John again, because I played for John for 4 years in college. And he really wanted me here. And when I got here, the team started getting healthy, and we started playing well, and everything kind of fell in place. I think maybe I was a missing link. I don't know, but that kind of kept everything together. And then we started Elvin as a rookie center. We go to New Orleans, and Dick Van Arsdale breaks his hand. And then we started Ricky Sober at the point guard, moved Westfall to the shooting guard, and I think that's when we took off. At that point, we started really playing well, started winning, and we started moving up. So we felt we had a chance to make the playoffs.
So you just mentioned John McLeod. How easy did that make that transition, since he was your coach at Oklahoma? And we represent Oklahoma on this podcast. We had Joe Washington on the show too. So we represent the Sooners. So, but how did he help you in the transition, going there and then immediately having someone you're familiar with?
Well, when I first got there, he called me and said that, you headed west, it's west. I think I'm going to LA, right? So, and he said, we got you in Phoenix. And when I got here, we sat down and he just said, I know what you can do and I believe in you. And this is what we're going to do. And we got a good chance of winning some games. So, just believe in it and do the thing you did in college. We'll be okay.
That Suns team was about to go on quite a ride that obviously you didn't see coming. No one did. And it was another Sooner stud that was helping to lead the way in his rookie season, Alvin Adams, one of the Suns' all-time greats. Did you like that it was two Oklahoma guys who were teaming up to do some damage out in Phoenix?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it because we had the coach from Oklahoma, then we had Alvin at the starting center and myself. But the thing that helped Alvin a lot, and he don't get a lot of credit, Curtis Perry and myself were the two forwards. So we both had played on the East Coast. So it's a different brand of basketball than it was on the West Coast. So we kind of freed Alvin up to do a lot of things that he could do as far as physical, because guys tried to take advantage of him because he was a small guy. But I think the two of us kind of protected him more than anything else. And he had the skill that could take the big guys outside. Was a great passer. People don't realize how good a passer Alvin was. But he was a great passer, and he also was a great scorer.
I got to ask you also, you talked about playing with McAdoo. What was it like playing with Paul Westphal? Just a pure score.
Different in the sense that Westphal had a lot of different types of shots, but it was different because he didn't have the ball as much because Ricky Silver ran the show, but John called a lot of plays for him, but he could score from anywhere. He could get to the basket. He can go left-handed, right-handed. And he was just an amazing guy. I played against him when I was in Buffalo and he was in Boston. So I kind of knew what he could do. And we had a unique team there because we had Westphal, who came from Boston, myself, who came from Buffalo, Curtis Perry came from Milwaukee, I believe, and Ricky Silver and Alvin Adams was rookies. So that was our starting five. So it was kind of interesting how that team kind of fell together.
You played 15 years in the league and for many different teams, and you made a lot of big shots in your career. But when everyone wants to talk about Gar Heard, they have to refer to the shot in the 76 NBA Finals between you and the Celtics, and what I think is maybe the greatest NBA playoff game ever played. What are your memories of that? And I guess, the hard part was you ended up not winning the game in triple overtime, but that shot you made just thrilled everyone and forced into that triple overtime.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because you never really think about situations like that. Growing up, you always say, I want to hit this shot. You work on this is a game-winning shot or this is a big-time shot. But when it happened, I said, we got to play another 5 minutes, right? And we felt that once the game was tied, we had a chance to actually win the game. But it's so much happened in that game. You wouldn't believe it. Other people don't understand that. They don't remember that other fans came out of the stands, attacked the officials. They don't remember that. The Celtics had gone into that locker room and started getting undressed because they thought the game was over. So it was a whole lot of things that's going on. And I think Curtis Perry pulled the fans off of Richie. I think it was Richie Howard. And we'll say, why don't you pull him off? You should let him stay on. And Richie didn't make that call when Paul Silas called the timeout, and he wouldn't give them the timeout, and they didn't have any timeout left. So so everybody was kind of disappointed with that. But overall, the team, we felt that anytime we was in a game late in the season, we had a chance to win the game. And one team that one series that people don't give us credit for is the Golden State series. They was the defending champions, right? And so we beat them in Game 7 in Oakland, and people don't give us the credit for that. But they remember the Boston series not because who won it, but because of Game 5 and because of the triple overtime.
I remember I think 15 years old watching the game. I think it was on CBS, and it was like I say, one of the greatest games ever. And did Paul Westphal intentionally call a timeout knowing he didn't have one to set up the ability for you guys to have a chance to win the game or tie the game?
To tie the game, yes. Yes, he did.
So can you go through that? What exactly happened there?
Well, I think when JoJo made the one free throw, Paul called a timeout. We didn't have any left. So in NBA, if you call a timeout, you can advance the ball to half court. And we knew that we could not advance the ball with 1 second left from full court. So Paul went down and told John to call the timeout. They only get one shot, and we get a chance to tie the game up, right? And I give him credit because that's when my shot came in. So I told Paul he made me famous. He didn't realize that. But and John called a timeout. So they advanced the ball to half court. And we got a chance to take the last shot to tie the game.
Hey, can you just go through that play, though, just real quick, where they throw you the ball and you've got literally less than a second to react to make that shot?
Yeah, I think Chris Fair was a passer. And I was at the top of the key. And I tell people, they don't realize Don Nelson was guard man. I knew Don Wilson, he can't jump over a needle. So I knew that he didn't have a chance to block my shot. So I figured if Boston guard in 1 second, you're never going to get a shot off in 1 second. So we never thought we had a chance to get the shot off. We got it off and, went into triple overtime.
Yeah, I can't imagine, like what was the drawn up play, Gar? Were you the number one option? What did John want to have happen besides what did happen?
Well, I told him I was the number one option, but I don't believe it. But no, I played for John in college, so I did take a lot of last shot for him in college. But Westfall was the first option. I give him, and I knew that Boston was going to cover him. We all knew that Boston was going to cover him because they didn't want him to make the shot. So that was the second option. And Curtis made the pass because they jumped to Westfall. He threw it right into me. So I always tell people, though, it was my play from the beginning.
Now, you did mention that you shot that ball over Don Nelson. Then
Right.
you coached with Don Nelson. Have you guys ever talked about that play? Have you guys ever gone over that, had some fun with it?
We kind of had a little bit of fun of it, but it's his son. Most of them will get on him about it more so than me. But we had him, and also the Paul Silas, and we talk about it a lot. But the players that was there really didn't talk about it as much as the fans, because we really thought that going back to Phoenix, that we had a chance to win Game 6, and so we were focused on that. But people don't realize the game was tape delayed. It wasn't live; it was tape delayed back there. And then we had to play Friday night, then Sunday afternoon in Phoenix. But you had to take a commercial flight from Boston to Phoenix, so it was tough, but it was fun. It was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
You ended up losing that game and the series in 6. You fall behind 3-2 after losing in triple overtime. How tough was that for you and the team to get over? Because if you win that Game 5, who knows what happens?
We go back to 7, right? It was tough because we felt that we could win at home. We always felt that, we could win at home. Although in the playoff, we felt that we could win a home game. If we get back to home, we could win it. And so we was kind of probably look ahead going back to Boston more so than anything else. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Ricky Silver got thrown out of that game for fighting. That hurt us too. But I talked to the official about why did you throw him out? You didn't throw the other guy out. He said he thought Ricky was trying to hurt the guy. But that was sober. And we had 3 series. He got in 3 fights. So that's just the way he was. Right?
Oh boy, Gar, you're great. Let me looking back, just going back through your career, looking back, is there a moment that maybe us, the fans, don't talk about that means a lot to you that's really never talked about?
Yeah, and I go back to the Golden State series, and it was Game 6 in Phoenix, and we was up 1 or 2 points, I think, and Jamal Will had a jump shot in the corner, in the right corner. If he makes a shot, we lose the game. And I had an opportunity to block that shot. Nobody talked about the block shot that actually set us to Game 7. That was a play I thought that I remember more than anything else.
And that's Jamal's shot too, right? The baseline.
Yeah, that's his shot from back. It's tough to block, it's tough to block.
Yeah, because I'm going to say he shot the ball like over his head. It was
Over
almost
his head,
behind his
yeah.
head. Shot.
Yeah.
So how did you block it?
I don't know. I was a pretty good shot blocker though. So, but this one of those things that the game was on the line, so you just go all out, and hopefully that you can get a piece of it. And I got a piece of it, and they sent us to Game 7 in Golden State, where we actually won it.
You've also been a coach in addition to being a player. Over the years, since you were playing in the 70s, how has the game changed? What's the biggest change you've seen?
I think the guys are more athletic than they are now, but it's not. I wouldn't say easier but it's not as physical as it was when we was playing. You know, and the shooting is so much better now. You know, distance wise and everything. But overall, I think it's just that the guys are more athletic, and the game has changed so much that it just. I think it's a much better game than it was then. More fun to watch, I should say, not better, but more fun to watch. You know, except that I think they shoot too many threes sometimes. You know, but otherwise, I think it changed a lot. It's for the benefit, for the best of everybody. It brings in a lot more fans, and that's what it's all about.
You were a head coach a couple of times, and we mentioned that you were a coach on Don Nelson's staff and as well on John McLeod's and Larry Brown as well. What was it like to work with Coach Brown?
Larry was probably different than any coach I ever worked with. I mean, he was a fun guy. I mean, he was really smart. He could remember stuff that happened during the game, at the beginning of the game, at the end of the game, that most coaches don't even think about. But he could tell you one play that happened, what happened on that play. He was good at putting things together, putting guys together. He was just a phenomenal basketball mind, and he loved the game. And I really learned a lot from him. I was with Larry for 5 years, I think. And I learned a lot from him, just watching him and do some of the things he do.
So, Gart, toughest player you played against in the league? Who gave you the most trouble?
Elvin Hayes. Because he was big, he could score. He had his turnaround jumper that, it was tough to beat. He and Rick Larry, he was no good. Rick was a fantastic player. He could handle the ball, he could shoot the basketball. And I think those were the two guys that gave him more trouble than anybody else.
So, Gar, we have a trivia segment on this show. It's called 50-50. You got a 50% chance of getting this question right. True or false? Okay. So we're going to go back to your Buffalo Braves days. So, true or false, before David Stern was commissioner of the NBA, he actually helped broker the deal that had the Braves move out of Buffalo to San Diego.
I think that's true.
You are absolutely correct. Apparently the owner of the Celtics wanted to move to the West Coast, and the NBA is like, no, the Celtics can't move. So he had him switch franchises with the owner of the Braves.
Became Buffalo.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that franchise moved to San Diego to become the club.
Right. That's right.
Wow, and David Stern, I think, was general counsel with the NBA. He just left the law firm he was with. He wasn't commissioner, but he was the one that helped negotiate all that.
I did not know that.
That's great, Mark. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that,
I feel bad for the people in Buffalo, though,
Well, because it was a big deal of switching franchises. And then the team moved. I don't know what, but they probably still upset because they left. So probably that wasn't the reason why. But
they still had the Bills and Sabres, but to me, the Braves were just such a forgotten franchise. They just had such great moments.
Yeah, the fans was fun too. They supported us too. So I was surprised that they moved, but who wouldn't go to San Diego instead of Buffalo? I can understand that.
A little more beautiful. What was it like playing for the San Diego Clippers in their infancy here in Southern California?
Oh, that was the worst. That was probably the worst team I played for. Franchise-wise, team-wise, that probably was the worst.
I don't think probably.
What was so bad about it?
Well, the front office wasn't that good. The ownership was really bad. And they just had a bunch of guys that really didn't care about winning. They didn't care about anything except themselves. And I think that was the main thing. Coming from an organization like Phoenix and Buffalo, and it was in Seattle, it was different playing with the Clippers. It's totally different.
Gar, you played for 5 teams in your career in the NBA, but do you consider yourself a Phoenix Sun more than any other team that you played for?
Yes, I do. Because I settled down here, and I do because Buffalo was my favorite team before then. But when I left Buffalo, it was about 20 degrees, a lot of snow on the ground. I come to Phoenix, it's 80 degrees. And I just say, okay, this is my new home. So I'm not leaving.
And you never looked back.
I never looked back. And then, of course, we started winning too, so that helped. But I just never looked back. Yeah.
Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard around the world in baseball, but it was Gar Heard who literally hit the shot heard around the world in basketball, one of the most famous shots in NBA history. Coach Heard, thanks so much for joining us today on the Past Our Prime podcast.
No problem. I enjoyed it. Anytime.
Gar,
But just remember, I made more than one shot, though.
I know.
So your career didn't end with you just scoring 2 points? Come on.
And if I see Jamal Wilkes, I'm going to say, how did Gar block that shot?
Yes.
He remembered.
Oh, I bet he
No
does.
one ever blocks that shot, man.
Yeah. So that shot, they don't talk about that at all, because it really wasn't a highlight type thing, but it was the last play of the game.
No.
And so that got us to Boston, really, because we beat them in Game 7.
On the cover of the April 28th, 1975 issue of Sports Illustrated, Gar Heard of the Buffalo Braves. Love it. Okay, let's move on.
Where there's smoke, there's ire. The Reds won the NL West in 72 and 73. The Young Dodgers won it in 74. The Reds in 75 and 76. The Dodgers in 77 and 78. The Reds in 79. You see a pattern here?
Yes.
I mean, those two teams dominated that division in that decade, and they did not like each other one bit. I don't think there's a rivalry like ours in either league, says Reds manager Sparky Anderson. The Giants are supposed to be the Dodgers' natural rivals, but I don't think the feeling is there anymore. It's not there the way it was with us and the Dodgers. So, yeah, these two teams fighting for dominance, not only in the NL West, but the National League, because they often represented the league in the World Series.
Yeah, I just remember that. Just looking at that picture on the cover there, or in the with Pete Rose, someone threw a smoke bomb out on the field.
Yeah.
Dang, man, I thought today was bad. They were throwing batteries, and I mean,
well, they said in the article that there was a foul ball to left field, and he throws the ball into the stands to give the ball as a souvenir, and the son of a bitch throws it and hits Rose with the ball.
Yeah. It's amazing that we always talk about, back in the day, the fans were, they wore their suits and they cared, and nowadays they're all crazy. I was throwing smoke bombs and balls and batteries and everything else on the field. Dang, man.
You know what I found interesting about this Reds-Dodgers rivalry, especially in 75? So the Reds finished the year 108 and 54, 20 games ahead of the Dodgers. Yet they had a losing record against the Dodgers that year. They were 8 and 10 against the Dodgers.
That's right. Yeah, the only team, I'm assuming, that with winning record.
I think there was one other team that gave them fits. But they were just like, and they had swept the Reds had won all 3 games in Cincinnati to begin the year, and then the Dodgers come back and sweep this series.
A 4-game set, yeah.
4-game series, right. But yeah, it's like you win 108 games. There's always 1 or 2 teams, no matter how good you are, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
One of those wins that the Dodgers in LA was started by Juan Marichal. He would last but 2 2/3 innings in the last appearance of his Hall of Fame career. He would sit on the Dodgers bench after being lifted from the game and tell his friend Manny Mota, that was it, I'm done. He would retire the next day. Pete Rose said he was the best pitcher I ever faced. So Juan Marichal calling it a career.
But how does Juan Marichal end his career in the Dodgers?
Right?
You think San Francisco would bring him back just for like one day, throw one pitch?
Well, wasn't Jeff Kent like this Giant and Dodger too?
Yeah, but Kent had a couple of good years with the Dodgers, didn't he?
He did.
But there's a theme in this issue we're going to see is players ending their career with the Dodgers. As we go through the issue, you'll see.
Good. Yeah, you're right, though, Billy. I mean, and that's one of the things that's great about this podcast is I had no idea that Marichal went to Boston
Said
let
you got a
alone
couple.
then finished his career in Los Angeles. So
You ended it against the team that is your hated rival.
right,
And the
right.
end of your career is walking off with that Dodgers logo on your shirt. It just, I don't know. For me, I just thought you think of the Giants would just bring them back and say, okay, you can pitch one inning out of the bullpen and, at least you end where you get the standing ovation. The Dodgers didn't care. Dodger fans didn't care about Juan Marichal.
No, they probably hated him after the John
Yes.
Roseboro incident.
But I just wanted to say I was looking at Rose, Morgan, Bench, Perez, and Concepcion. That's I was looking at what would these five key players be worth in today's money or today's market. Just those five alone would be worth
Yeah,
$1,037,000,000
that's
or 12
crazy.
million more than Otani and Yamamoto.
Hmm. So I got to think that of those five, I'd probably give for the shortest period of time, at least, the most money to Bench. That's probably where I'd
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
A power hitting, middle of the order, Gold Glove catcher.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is some sort of
Not many of those walking around.
no.
And he could hit for power. Defensively, he was the best in the game.
Yeah.
In every way. He made your pitching staff better because the Reds in those days didn't have the dominant pitching. Gary Nolan had some good years. Don Gullett had some good years.
Billingham was pretty good. Who said Penguins can't fly? Just like the Flyers, who pretty much stunk since they came into the league before winning it all in '74, the Penguins have been pretty horrid in their 7 seasons in the NHL, never having had a winning season until 1975. But Bill, despite their first successful season in the NHL and a trip to the playoffs, this was almost their last season in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but first let me say they were playing the Islanders and they were up 3 games to none. So you're thinking,
Right.
man, they're going to win this series and move on to the semifinals or quarterfinals. They lost the series 4 games to 3. They scored 14 goals in their first 3 games, 4 goals in their last 4. So
Mm.
poor Pittsburgh, right after the season ended, they went into a bankruptcy auction and ended up they were purchased by Edward DeBartolo, former now he ended up
Yeah,
buying the what is San Francisco
49ers. Yeah.
Niners. So he bought the Penguins because he didn't want them moving out of Pittsburgh. They
Right.
had been facing financial difficulties and they basically were a bad organization, but he kept them there. And then in '84, they got a lucky break. They got Mario Lemieux. They missed the playoffs. It sort of went bad, but Lemieux helped them, along with Jaromir Jagr, win 2 straight Stanley Cups. Time goes on. In 1999, they're about ready to move again. They have no money. The team's doing bad. Lemieux buys the team. And then a few years later, in 2005, they get to draft Sidney Crosby. They go to the playoffs, 16 straight years, win 3 more cups. Now they're an established NHL hockey team.
Yeah.
But 50 years ago, they were teetering.
Yeah.
They were thinking about moving to Seattle or Denver.
I know, I was thinking about that. Seattle would have had a hockey team a long
Long
time.
time ago.
Yes. They probably wouldn't have been called the Kraken.
No, yeah, what we have, like Seattle Green or something.
But the Penguins, first of all, how many teams are named the Penguins? I think Youngstown State in college is the Penguins.
Is it really?
Yeah, but
Bonsai.
it's such a great name. And I remember going actually to a Kings Penguins game in the '70s. But yeah, the Penguins were a struggling team, and when they blew that series against the Islanders was the first time and only time, except for the 1942 Red Wings at that period of time in history, that had ever blown a 3-0 lead in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Wow. Now
But
you know another team that did it, right?
yes,
San Jose
yep,
against the
sure.
Kings back when they
Right.
won their Stanley Cup year.
Right. It's happened a couple, I think it's 4 or
Yeah.
5 times total that it's happened. What I also remember about the Penguins is that in 1980, they decided, hey, they wore blue and white the first like 13, 14
I
years.
noticed it because Mark,
Yeah.
when we went to go see the Tigers play, the Stanley Cup was on, and the Penguins are wearing their old blue and white. And I thought I never knew that. Sorry.
Yeah, so when I saw them play the Kings, they wore blue and white. And then they said, no, look, Pittsburgh are the city's colors are black and gold, the Pirates, the Steelers. So they changed their uniforms
Oh.
to match those.
Smart.
I remember listening to Mario Lemieux score 8 points against the Kings, like 5 goals and 3 assists. Mario Lemieux, you take out that he had Hodgkin's disease and had to quit and not play a bunch of games, could arguably be the greatest scorer in NHL history. He
Mhm.
scored 200 points, I think, in a season, was 199, 200, and he
Right.
missed like 15 games. He was absolutely dominant, 6'5" or something, 240.
Yeah.
Big dude.
Yeah. He was Gretzky and talent-wise and huge.
And bigger. Yeah, yeah. Like Gretzky sort of, went around the sides. I mean, he didn't avoid people, but Lemieux went straight at you.
Yeah.
And if you put skates on, though, what are you, another 3 inches?
Yes, Mark, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they used to say about Zdeno Chara. He was like 7 feet tall.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It was like 6'10" or whatever was 6'7" or whatever. Yeah. Huge man.
Serving up an explosive set. Frank DeVord has some suggestions how to improve tennis. And the one I like most is the let serve be abolished. When you serve, if it hits the top of the net and bounces into the court you were serving to, it's called a let, and you serve it over. DeFord says the shot should be live and you play it, and I agree. It would make a bit of a change to the game that is pretty strict. The other one he wants changed, now get this, in tennis, I don't know if it's still this way, but if a linesman is obscured by something and doesn't get a clear look at the ball, whether it was in or out, they play a let, or as 8-year-olds call it, a do-over. He writes, Phil Chenier has scored on a driving layup in the last second to make it 101 to 100. Look, guys, we're going to have to play that one over. Jake O'Donnell was closest to the action, but Nate Thurman obscured his vision a little, and I just can't make up my mind whether it was charging or hacking, so we'll play a let, okay?
He had one really good point where he says no more 3 of 5 set matches. If you can't, it's a waste of time. If a player can't win in 3 sets, you shouldn't expect anyone to care if he wins in 5 or 7 or 39. Which is true, because that's why I love women's tennis. It's a best of 3. Men's tennis, it can take forever.
I would agree with that unless you are watching Federer versus Nadal or something like that, where, it really is like a marathon and who can really last. So like most of the majors are the 5 setters. Like UCLA was a best of 3, and that was fine for those kind of smaller tournaments. But yeah, tennis is not what it was. That's for sure. Even with those 3 great players that just, all were together, it just doesn't have the same. Maybe it's because there's no great American player and hasn't been for some time. I don't know what it is.
What nationality is Sinner? Is he American?
That's a good question.
The guy that just was busted for the drug deal, whatever.
He's the best tennis player in the world.
Let me see. I'm gonna.
Is he Italian?
I don't know. Look up right now. Italian, very good. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he got in trouble?
Yeah, he's been suspended or something, didn't he?
Doping case.
Doping case. That's it.
Serena Williams said she would have received a 20-year ban for similar doping.
That's very possible. She may be right on that.
Yeah.
Different world.
Goodbye to all that. Part 4 of Leo DeRocher's book, Nice Guys, finished last. We've done a lot on this, starting with DeRocher's playing days and winning it all in 1934 with the Cardinals. And in part 2, we talked about his managing career that ended in 73 with the Houston Astros, and spoke with Jerry Royce, the left-handed pitcher who played for Leo on that team, on our show 2 weeks ago. Last week, we spoke with author and journalist Joshua Prager about the 51 Giants team that DeRocher managed when they came back from 13 games back to beat the Dodgers on the Bobby Thompson home run. Did much of it by cheating, which is chronicled by Prager in his book, The Echoing Green. So what else is there to say about Leo? He goes into great detail about, after being fired by the Cubs, was lying in bed watching TV, planning a trip to the Far East when the phone rang, and it was an offer to manage the Astros. He went to Houston and took notes on the team for the final 31 games. He managed that year in 72 and really thought they could win the division in 73. We already talked about who was winning the NL West those years. And let me tell you, it was not the Astros. A bunch of good kids on the team, Jimmy Wynn, Lee May, and Doug Radar, he writes, but, quote, the only one who was real trouble on the Houston club was a pitcher, Jerry Royce. Bill, we spoke with Jerry about this a couple weeks ago, and these two just butted heads, didn't they?
Yeah, it's just there's always someone in your life. I think there was a lot more misunderstanding between the two. There were points there where, what did he say? He said, Jerry Royce, as good an arm as you'd want to see. All the trouble was in his head. If you asked anybody in the Houston club what was wrong with Royce, they'd have told you, well, there's not much wrong with him. He's just a little flaky. And he goes into saying that Jerry wanted to take his wife on trips and he didn't like that. And then Jerry would come back and go, well, you're trying to be too much of a pal to the players, because DeRocher decided at the end of his career to play cards with the players. And by looking over Royce's book, he had said, he goes, no 20-year-old wants some 66-year-old guy wiping the floor with them in cards. But yeah, DeRocher and Royce never hit it off when they played when Royce played for him. But at the end of his life, DeRocher and Royce got to make up, thanks to Tommy Lasorda. So in a sense, it all worked out. They were able to figure each other out and why they really did like each other.
The main reason Leo takes the Astros job was to manage what he thought might be the next Willie Mays. Mark, it didn't quite turn out that way.
No, it was Cesar Cedeno, who he thought was the most talented player in baseball. He only compared him to two other guys, Willie Mays and another player named Pete Reiser, which it's kind of weird thinking Reiser and Mays in the same sentence. But he said he had just unbelievable talent. He was batting, I think, that one year with towards the end of the season, with 21 games to go, he was batting like 320, had 55 stolen bases, 22 homers, 82 RBIs, great fielder. But what DeRocher would say is that Mays had this work ethic. He would never be sick. Cedeno was always complaining about something, a bellyache, a toothache, a headache, and then he had a temper. And this, just drove DeRocher nuts. As good as player Cedeno was, he could have been an even better player had he had some of the attributes that Mays had.
Yeah.
Or Carlton Fisk.
Or Carlton Fisk, right?
Yeah.
But we were talking about, and Cedeno still had a great career, and he played with the Astros from 70 to 81, then the Reds and the Cards, and he ended his career in 1986 with the Dodgers.
Oh.
The only team in the show.
Really?
Yep.
I think DeRocher had a quote in there somewhere that basically said he couldn't figure out a way to tell this 19 or 20-year-old kid that you are a generational talent and you're pissing it away. And you're right. He did end up having a nice career.
Yep.
But there was always this kind of like underlying thing about that he never quite lived up. And, look, you're not going to live up to Willie Mays. Very few are. He's like we said last week, maybe the greatest player ever. But, Cedeno was a very, very good player, but, not a Hall of Famer. And DeRocher thought he should have been.
Right.
The Cubs open with clubs. Rick Monday has worked for the Dodgers for a very long time as a player and announcer, but 60 years ago, he was the #1 overall pick in the first draft in baseball, correct?
Yeah, correct. The first draft was held in 1965 in New York City on June 8th and 9th. And the Kansas City Athletics selected Rick Monday #1.
Charlie Finley.
Yeah. And he played for the A's, until 71 in both Kansas City and Oakland, then the Cubs from 72 to 76, and then the Dodgers from 77 to 84, where he ended his career.
Yep.
Scott, didn't you say who the A's get for Monday?
Ken Holtzman, who won.
That's right.
I want to say 19 games in 72, 21 in 73, and another 19 in 74. So he was a stalwart on those 3 straight World Series teams. And, kind of talking a little bit about like Cesar Cedeno, Monday's much of the same thing. Had some good seasons, but never quite lived up to that #1 overall pick. Had some good moments, had that big home run for the Dodgers against the Expos in 81.
And then, of course, he saved the American flag.
In 76, right, at Dodger Stadium as a member of the Cubs, one of the greatest moments in Dodger Stadium history. So,
but he never had 100 RBIs in his career ever. His best was 77.
Yeah,
he was very. I would say I think it's unfair because anyone playing Major League Baseball is awesome, but he was average.
Yeah,
he's not a guy that you look at and go, "Oh man, thank God I got Monday in the lineup today." He was like, "Okay, he's good."
Yeah, and he did get traded to the Cubs right when the Cubs became pretty horrible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not much protection in the lineup. But no, you're right. I think he had 26 home runs that first season in Chicago or something
Yep.
like that, which is, fine. Back then that was actually a big deal to hit that many
Yep.
home runs. But
Yep.
but yeah, you're right. Pretty much an average player. One other note I wanted to mention was another center fielder, Fred Lynn, 23, goes 9 for 15, had 3 homers, drove in 7 runs as Boston split 4 games. This is the first time we will talk about this young star playing center field for the Red Sox. And oh, what an incredible season 1975
Yeah.
was for Fred Lynn.
Right. And
Was
I
that
wanted
an
to quick,
MVP and a rookie of the year there?
Yeah, first person to ever do that.
Yeah.
and I wanted to mention another outfielder, Amos Otis of the Kansas City Royals, who said he's a firm believer in the wind. He said, he said, when the wind blows, Otis will go. So it's when it's blowing out, I try to hit homers. And when it isn't, I just go for base hits.
How he would make it in this day and age,
Right.
not swinging from his heels.
Yes.
Yeah. What happens when you play indoors?
That's right. That's right. You're all confused.
Firm believer in air conditioning.
I want to add that Rick Monday, we talked about him being the #1 player. There was quite a few decent players in that draft there in 1965. Johnny Bench was
Yeah.
drafted in the 2nd round.
Mm.
Tom Seaver in the 10th round. Nolan Ryan in the 12th round. And then a guy that we've all talked to, Tom House, was drafted in the 11th round.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, it does it show. And if you look at that first round, and mind you, I don't have it in front of me. You look at the first round of that draft, there's really no one in it. It all really gets going in the 2nd round. It's like really great players 2nd round up, but the first round sort of like, oh, there's a lot of, when you go to the draft, sometimes it'll push on the player that actually played. There's a lot of guys that are grayed out because they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Baseball's a very tough
Yeah.
sport.
I feel like they're a little bit better now, but not significantly. There's still probably over 50% of first round draft picks that either don't make it to the bigs or have very little impact in the bigs.
And they're also a lot of times when you're drafted in the first round. I remember a kid I met years ago. He had been drafted in the 19th round or something like that by the Tigers. And he said, if you're drafted in the first round, he goes, and remember, they're not that much better than you from my round to that round. He goes, they get all of the great coaches. He goes, they throw it at them. He goes, guys like me, he goes, you have to literally be perfect for them to give you any time, the time of the day. So like nothing against Joe Adell of the Angels. I shouldn't just pick him out, but he's in the major leagues and he's back to hitting 190 again. But because he's a first round pick and they've put a lot of money into him.
They want him to succeed.
Yes.
Yes. The Count, John Manafusco. Billy, how did he get that nickname?
It was given to him by then Giants announcer Al Michaels, who dubbed him the Count of Montefusco, a pun based on his last name, similar to the Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah. Who knew?
Yeah, I didn't know Al Michaels. Man, what an amazing announcer with so many great teams.
Yeah.
I remember
Great
Al
sports.
Michaels. When I lived in Brentwood, I used to see Al Michaels all the time on San Vicente at the magazine rack.
He's a big Kings fan, Billy.
No question. He's at every game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool warm up for Jimbo. The Jimmy Connors John Newcomb death match is coming up, and the top ranked Connors is getting ready for it by playing his first WC tournament, in which he beat Brian Gottfried in the finals and said afterwards, it was a week of 31 losers and me.
That's a great quote, though, man. That's a great quote. I was just looking at that when you said it. That's a great quote.
There's a reason Connors was not well liked by fellow players 50 years ago. Bill Reardon, Connors' big bout manager, said the Vegas match was getting dull with Newcomb losing all the time. We needed to hype the gate. Anyway, my man needs the work. So Newcomb has his detractors as well. And leading up to the match, he said, Connors has no class. Tell Chris Everett I'm going to beat her man and then teach him how to dance as a favor to her. She'll know what I mean. I don't quite know what he means, but I think I do kind of know what he means.
Now, have you guys ever been around someone that cocky?
Oh, yes. The two of you.
Oh, obviously.
Damn, the ego you two have. My God.
I just no, when you said that 31 losers and me, when I was on Wipeout years ago, the kid there was a guy in there and he literally walked around. You're in this little little trailer, and he walked around to everybody and goes, "You're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. You're gonna lose." Pretty much went to 25 of us. There was 26 of us, and he said it to everybody
How
because
do you
he
do?
said. Then at the end he goes, "I'm gonna win." So just so you guys know,
How do you do?
he was taken off on a stretcher in the middle of the first round.
No
I
way.
mean,
Yeah,
you know what?
yeah,
There's a difference between ego, cockiness, and confidence, you know?
yeah.
Right.
It's not that big of a difference.
No,
Well,
but that's just this guy walked around to everybody, pointed at him and said, "I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you. I'm the best here." And then all of a sudden, they had to stop the filming because they said, "Oh, one guy's having, trouble on the course. He's sick, so they got to get him out of there." And it was the guy that told everybody. Everyone got a great kick out of that.
I
Everybody
bet.
in the thing, every girl and guy were like, "The guy that said he's going to win." They wheeled him out like you hear the ambulance leaving, and we're like, "Oh, guess he's not going to win." But Connors at least can back it up.
Right, right. And you remember the famous, I think it was 1984, might have been the first 3-point shooting contest.
Yeah.
And Bird walks into the locker room with all the other guys and says, "Which one of you is finishing second?"
And he backed it up,
He
man.
backed it up. Yep. A win for High Spirits, an ABA shocker as the St. Louis Spirits lost game 1 of their series to the defending champion New York Nets, then proceeded to win the next 4 games, their longest winning streak ever. 4 games. The Spirits are a young team led by rookies Marvin Barnes and Maurice Lucas. Heck, they are a young organization. Their radio announcer is just 23 years old.
Right. And who could that be?
Right?
Bob
Bobo.
Costas.
Yeah. Amazing. So yeah, the Spirits, I think, were 32-50 or something like that, and ended up making the playoffs. Basically, almost every team in the ABA made the playoffs.
Right.
And shocked the Nets, and 23-year-old Bob Costas is behind the mic calling the game. So Sandra Palmer wins the LPGA the same week. I think Arnold Palmer won a PGA Tour event this week, but it was Sandra Palmer who wins on the LPGA. Bill, tell me about her.
Well, she was a cheerleader and homecoming queen at the University of North Texas. So she was quite the looker there out there on the course. Didn't matter. She was a great player. And she won one of the biggest prizes ever at the beginning of women's golf. She won $32,000. And they said the average LPGA tournament is the total prize money for a tournament normally is right around 54,000. And for this time, obviously she picked up 32, so the money was going up.
Well,
She was the 75. She was the LPGA Player of the Year in 1975.
oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Dinah Shore was a big advocate for women's golf, celebrity back in the day, and one of the
her own
first
TV show.
have her own like talk show and stuff like
Yep.
that. So
Yep.
really helped. That's what helps these lesser sports is getting prize money. Prize money makes people more interested,
It does.
and there you go. So for the record, Bill.
Okay, who knew that way back in the day, this country, I'm talking about China, they submitted an application for recognition from the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. That's how small they were back in 75. Nowadays, if you look at the bottom of anything you own right now, it'll say 3 words: made in China.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some tariffs or something like that that's been going on in the news. I haven't been paying
Yeah,
attention.
don't know anything
That
about
has
that.
something
Yeah.
to do with that, but that's not what this podcast is about.
No.
Faces in the crowd. Mark, you got one for us?
Yeah, Andrew Prince, who's the Prince of the Fellow. He's a 6'7" senior forward at Abilene Christian in Texas. He set the school scoring record of 1,624 points in his career. He also held down 1,000 rebounds, and he was named to the Lone Star Conference All-Tournament team. He actually has the career rebounding leader for Abilene Christian. So he was a recognizable force for the Abilene Christian basketball team, who once in a while you'll see them in the NCAA and March Madness. They'll get, in fact, if they played, UCLA, I want to say Abilene Christian upset. They like beat like Texas or someone a couple years ago, and UCLA ended up playing them like in the Sweet 16 or something when they should, or in the second round when they should have had a much tougher opponent.
I'm pretty sure in the faces in the crowd last year we had an Abilene Christian guy by the name of Wilbert Montgomery.
Oh
Ah,
man, good call back there.
Right? Yeah. Who had a pretty decent career. Bill, what do you got?
I'm going to talk about Burt Jenkins. Burt Jenkins, this is quite impressive. And in 28 years as a basketball coach at Gulfport, his teams won seven state championships and 13 Big Eight titles. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
great on your resume.
that's very impressive.
But it gets a little bit more interesting. Just a little side note. During the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, Jenkins was wounded and captured by the German army on January 5th, 1945, and lost a leg as a
Oh, my
result of his
God.
injuries.
My goodness.
I
By the
just
way,
thought, here's a dude you're talking about doing so great in basketball. He was captured by the Germans and
Yeah.
lost a leg.
yes, that would make basketball pretty easy for him.
Exactly. I thought, and it's just a small thing on their website. And mind you, they got it wrong. They said he was, it was sounded and capted. So they didn't even write it correctly. So I had to go back and look. But you just think here's a guy that's coaching basketball and probably none, it was high school. None of his kids, how many do you think they knew that he was in the Battle of the Bulge?
No.
They
Not
probably what the heck is the
right.
Battle of the Bulge? Is
Exactly.
that like a weight gain thing?
That's what I was thinking. You go to Jack in the Box
you
too
know,
many times.
they're looking at this guy who's hopping along on, he's only got one leg, he's probably on crutches or something like that. And here's like the definition of a hero.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the kids
But,
are
you
probably
know,
going, if he could just do what we did, he'd understand how tough it is. What's he ever done in life?
Yeah.
But the actual Battle of the Bulge was fought like in mid-December 44 until late January 45, and the Germans were trying to do a counteroffensive to stall the war out, where they wouldn't have to do a full-out surrender. They could negotiate something. And they were doing pretty well initially, but the Panzer tanks that the Germans have were superior to what the U.S. had, the Sherman tanks. But they had a gas issue. They couldn't go very far. And what happens is I think something happened to their gas supply, and basically all the Panzer tanks just died, and that just
Wow.
swung the battle back to the U.S. and the Allies, and that was the Germans' last chance to prolong the war. Then it was just a matter of time before it ended.
Who knew we got a guy that knew about the Battle of the Bulge?
Yeah.
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 The rest is history.
Yes.
19th hole, Bill.
That's it, man. This is from Beth White. She said, I am sure glad to hear that Vasily Alexiev has the best Bulgarian peppers in all of Shakti, not to mention his being the best on his team at marksmanship, singing, harpentry, tennis, drafts, dominoes, billiards, volleyball, and of course, lifting weights. Hey, thanks for a great story. Never sat a guy that gets great at everything.
Well, the guy on Wipeout.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Reggie. That's right. That's right. I always wonder if he ever looks back at that. I mean, because no one ever does, and think maybe I shouldn't have been so cocky.
Well, the real thing is about a guy like that, which is just, is that nobody's going to come to that guy's aid.
They didn't.
So, if anyone else just comes and just is, just keeping to themselves and they get hurt, everyone's going to be like, oh, let's go help Bill. He was, such a good dude. But this guy, they're just like, oh, he can rot in hell for all I care, So.
But the craziest thing, when I get up on my first event, you get up on the first initial event and they hold you there for like 10 minutes so they can get the camera angles and stuff like that. So I'm talking to one of the producers. And I said, oh, it's going to be funny. He goes, yeah. He goes, we're all hoping Reggie wins. Because the guy was so cocky and so outspoken and so, loud.
TV. Yeah.
Yes, he goes, we're hoping he wins. And I thought, well, we'll see. But, he was out after half a round. So
he was no match for the Billy Goat.
No, damn right. Damn right. It's one, as I said, it's one thing to be cocky. It's another thing to at least back it up a little bit. No matter what I did, I just told people just try to be fun with the camera because that's what they said. But I would never go up and do the I'm going to win. In my head, I might have thought that, but not outwardly.
Even then, you're thinking, I hope I win.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you never when you and on something like Wipeout, you have no idea how you're going to land and what injury you're going to get. It's not.
You
It's
also have no idea. You could be going up against some guy who was an all-state running back or something.
exactly.
You
Well,
don't
no,
know.
they brought out 2 NFL players midway
Yeah.
through the first round and put them on the course. And one was a Texan, I think. I can't remember his name. And they left. They didn't finish the course. They stopped.
Yeah, it's tougher just because you're a super athlete. 'Cause,
Yes.
I mean, it takes some kind of mindset. It takes a Bill Mahoney to do it.
Well,
Absolutely.
we,
Absolutely. Yeah, he
but
came
hey,
back to
I win.
came back to spring training that year and was worthless. He couldn't walk for
I
3
know.
Well, he was staying at my place when he was doing it. He'd
That's
come all
right.
dirty and
That's
grungy.
right.
I
And
said,
that
take
was
a shower there, Bill, before you come home.
that's when the San Francisco Giant guy, I went in the clubhouse. That's when you have the Giant contract, and he goes, "You're in bad shape. You can just sit at my locker." Nice
Yeah.
there.
So the player thought you were so beat up.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, he just came up. He goes, "Man," he goes, "You look like you're in bad shape." I said, "Oh, I was on a TV show, Wipeout." And he goes, "Oh, was it tough?" And I said, "Very." And he goes, "Well, you're in bad shape. You can just sit at my locker." So I
Wow.
got interviewed a player. I
Which player
wish I
was
would
that?
know the player's name.
Damn.
Yeah.
It was not Bonds.
Or JT Snow. Neither of those guys.
That's it for now. On to May. Connor's on the cover next week. Bill, who's our guest?
Who
We
is
are
it?
working on that as we speak. It'll be someone.
It'll be someone. We'll always get someone at the last minute that
Yeah.
we'll have to do a lot of work on.
For Bill, for Mark, I'm Scott. We are past our prime.